Hello, everybody. Welcome again to our CSUCI's Santa Rosa Island Research Station speaker series. This is our 5th event this semester. We have today and then one more to go, and we're super excited to have a bunch of people in Zoom and then a couple people here in a live audience as well. We have a really cool speaker today. We have Peter Dixon from the Nature Conservancy. He's going to be speaking to us about his post there and all about his career path in life. And I'm sure we're going to be super excited to get some really cool takeaways from his presentation. Just a couple of announcements. Basically, we are super excited to announce that we had just finished our field school session, information sessions about the field school that's going to be happening in summer of 2022. And the application is officially open. So if you were thinking about doing the field school sessions in the summer, they are officially happening. You can go and apply for that. But if you want some more information about the field school and what that is and what that entails, it is open to all majors. And we recorded the 2 info sessions that we have and put it on our YouTube channel. So please check that out as well. We also have one more speaking event as well that's going to be happening on November 16th, I believe. It's two Tuesdays from now, where Noah Williams, who is a water program coordinator for the Big Pine Paiute tribe up in the Owens Valley. He's also a CSUCI alumni, and he will be speaking about his role out there and how a little bit more about his connection to the Channel Islands as well, and the college as well. So that'll be really exciting. Again, subscribe on our YouTube channel. If you miss any of these sessions, we'll post them on there as well. And we'll go ahead and get started. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and introduce and welcome Peter Dixon to our speaker series. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Myra, for that introduction and for inviting me here. This is really cool. The first time I've got to speak in person in any event in a couple of years, so I'm nervous. But I'll, yeah. So today I'll talk about my role with the Nature Conservancy. I'm a restoration project manager for the Santa Clara River and Coast. And I'll also talk a little bit about my background and career and also experience on the islands where I worked previously. So yeah, I'll get going. And my apologies if I looked down a lot. I'm just trying to see notes and stuff too.
And we'll also have time for Q&A afterwards as well.
Yeah. So here in Ventura County, we have some incredible resources, including the Santa Clara River. And my first slide, I just wanted to share some of these remarkable organisms that we find in our region. And I've put up slides, and I observed when I selected these slides that we have these images of these animals, but in fact, I've never seen, well, all except 3 on this, all except 1 on this slide. I know they're there. We have images of them from our camera traps, but they're not, they're kind of inconspicuous, and you know, kind of they're hiding, which speaks to their resilience and also their importance for conservation. So the 2 camera trap photos are from our Hansen Preserve in Santa Paula. And so we captured a bear from there, as well as a mountain lion and the Southern California steelhead and the leaf spales vireo. These are some of these iconic species that occur here, but are, you know, most people will go throughout their lives in Ventura County without ever seeing them, which I think is cool. So also on the Santa Clara River, we have a number of threats that are increasing. And those include drought, invasive species, urbanization, and groundwater depletion. And just recently, a study was published that looked at the impacts of the drought on the Santa Clara River and how it's impacting riparian vegetation, where there's this brown wave occurring starting up in the Fillmore area and a lot of the wetland riparian forests there, where we're observing a decline or complete die-off of some of those habitats. So we can learn a lot about the Santa Clara River watershed in part from a historical ecology study that was conducted. And this map shows the historical ecology from the 1800s. And so I'll note that the Santa Clara River is significant because it's one of the last free-flowing rivers in Southern California. It's more or less unimpeded by dams, although there's some obstructions, of course, and other habitat impacts. But it's home to over 18 threatened and endangered species. And the floodplain once was much more broad than it is today. So the historical ecology study identifies some of those historic wetland areas. And let me just kind of scroll down here. And part of the uniqueness of the Santa Clara River is due to the geology, the underlying geology that creates wet and dry reaches, and the kind of corresponding riparian forests that are associated with those areas. So the former estuary of the Santa Clara River once was as wide as 2 miles across of floodplain, and other areas in the vicinity of Santa Paula where there's large riparian forest stands, as well as these historic cienagas that occurred in the Fillmore area near where the current day fish hatchery. These are all where we have remnant habitats that their historical extent was much broader than it is today. Also on the map in this study, they identified a lot of the historical kind of migration of the river, where the river would migrate down towards south of Oxnard and had the mouth of the river had various outfalls, including at Ormond Lagoon and elsewhere. So the Nature Conservancy since 2001 has identified the Santa Clara River as a conservation priority, and since 2001 has been acquiring properties along the Santa Clara River floodplain, and to date has conserved about 21 river miles, or about over 4,000 acres. And part of the reason why acquisitions is the strategy is a historic relic of the land grant era, where you can actually own the river bottom, and it's all parcelized. So, the strategy includes acquisition of fee properties, as well as conservation easements that are managed by the Nature Conservancy, as well as involvement in groundwater management projects and planning and farm land protection, which also contributes to the protection of the floodplain. So let me just kind of make sure I got all my notes here. And in addition, restoration, which is occurring, the Nature Conservancy is conducting, as well as work that's being conducted with our partners. And to date, over 1,000 acres of the riparian floodplain have been restored, or currently are being restored in the vicinities of Santa Paula and the Fillmore area. So we're pretty lucky here in Ventura County, and I'm just kind of want to make sure I don't miss any points. That also, so part of the way the Nature Conservancy got where it is today was in part due to some studies that were conducted that assessed the habitat values of what's left in the Santa Clara River, as well as the potential for conservation of different parcels in the watershed. And so from that study, there were these nodes identified that are identified on the map. And those are kind of large parcel blocks that could be acquired, conserved, and restored, and contributing the most habitat value to those those nodes. And so they're identified as the estuary node, the Hanson node in Santa Paula area, Sespe node, which represents Santa Paula, to the confluence of the Sespe Creek, and the Fillmore area that includes the historic cienagas, as I mentioned. So we're pretty lucky in Ventura County. There's been some really remarkable planning efforts initiated by the county. So one is the SOAR, Saving Open Space, which is a zoning ordinance that protects open space in the county. basically open space and farmland, requiring a vote to change zoning of those open space areas that are in unincorporated areas in the county. So that was first passed in 1995, and then in yes, sorry, there's a plane going over.
Still sounds great. Oh, perfect.
Sweet.
We're getting more. Still sounds great. So.
So SOAR was renewed in 2016, and the new ordinance will apply until 2050. So hopefully, again, it'll be renewed at that time. But wow. Important to note that those farmlands and that that landscape that makes Ventura County unique, that we identify with the agricultural landscape of Ventura County, is protected as long as we can, you know, maintain kind of support for that kind of in the community, and be vigilant for when if, you know, votes do come up where, you know, obviously there's competing interests for housing, etc. And then another one that was just recently passed in 2019 is this habitat zoning overlay, which is one of the first of its kind in the nation that it's a zoning ordinance overlay that connects the Santa Monica Mountains to the Los Padres National Forest and includes the Santa Clara River floodplain, and just limiting certain types of development fences along the habitat zoning overlay. So I'll transition to the part that is really making me anxious, but I'm going to talk a little more about my background and just kind of how I got involved in the field that I am in now. So, I was born in California, in Long Beach, California, and so this is like all superheroes have an origin story, right? So this is like my origin story, but awesome. not claiming any superpowers. But so I think like this photo is was taken in San Diego County. I'm like 7 years old or so at like a birthday party, I think. And so what's significant about the photo is kind of the backdrop, like what's in the distance. And so we lived in suburban California, right on the edge of a canyon that kind of bordered along kind of the mesas and open chaparral and coastal sage scrub of San Diego County. And you can actually see it in the photo that there's like a grading line that's in place where that kind of landscape that I looked out on was developed, you know, with housing. And right about that time, I think I didn't have any awareness of what the coastal sage scrub or chaparral meant or what lived there. But following the development that occurred there, this kind of erasure of the landscape that I had known and played in and explored, all the kind of old stock ponds and dirt roads that I would explore, and me and my buddies would just kind of go kind of into this wild space. They were just gone, and it just left this mark that like still sticks with me today. And so that's, I think, a big part of kind of why, you know, I started asking questions as I got older about like, is there another way to do this? And like, you know, yeah, kind of not even recognizing at the time that I was living in a house that was, you know, kind of built on this kind of former landscape. So there's, you know, kind of ways that we grow as people and kind of start to think about that. Another influence as I was growing up was my family, who had a nursery in Michigan, and my grandfather who started this small business growing trees and shrubs. And I would visit there growing up, and as a teenager, I'd work out on the farm, kind of growing trees and shrubs and doing landscaping. And he was a really kind and gentle person and really loved sharing his experience with me. And so that really left a mark too. So I went to school at the University of Oregon. I decided, you know, from those experiences, I wanted to study landscape architecture. And so I landed in Oregon, and at the University of Oregon, I met this guy. This is Eugene Skinner, and so I would ask the audience if anyone knows what Eugene Skinner's known for.
No, I don't know. And if anybody has questions in the chat or anything, you can just write them in, and Russ can let us know.
Okay, well, so I'm guessing that maybe if there's some Ducks fans, they figured out that the city is named Eugene, the city of Eugene, where the University of Oregon is. So he was the archetypal pioneer father, like frontiersman, and founded this town. It was like the county seat of Lane County, and it was situated in the Willamette Valley. So that this little city of Eugene, where he kind of decided to put his cabin, grew to this, 170,000 people today, and supported industries like agriculture and timber. So what I think is really curious, and I'm about to hopefully blow some minds right now, but if you guys have seen the opening scene of The Simpsons, which is pictured in the image there, so that's Jebediah Springfield. So, okay. So incidentally, there's a city right on the other side of the river of Eugene called Springfield. And well, I don't know, you guys, okay, hopefully there's some Simpsons fans out there, and I'm not dragging this out too long, but I'm you have your conspiracy theories, I have mine. This is one of the longest running TV mysteries. So, okay, well, if you remember what the principal's name in Bart and Lisa Simpson's school, Principal Skinner. Yeah. Okay. And if you've ever looked at the statue of Jebediah Springfield, it says, "A noble spirit embiggens the smallest man." And estimated by historians that Eugene Skinner was only 5'4" tall.
We're getting up. What? From Ken Neeson.
So, I'll believe what I want to believe. You guys can take your own interpretation of who this guy really is. Time traveler, maybe.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I am, let's see. Okay, so Eugene Skinner founded this town. He built a little cabin, and he was in this river valley, the Willamette River. And it, according to the stories, the records from his other frontiersmen, he was going to build his house closer to the river, but some natives who also, occupied the land, this was their land, they actually had to tell him, don't build so close to the river, that river's going to flood. And it kind of just makes me think, when I hear those stories, just how big of a knowledge gap that this person had. And, he is kind of this archetype that we celebrate in our, a lot of towns have their statue of the founder. And this person, for example, he really didn't know what the ecology, what was going on. He didn't understand kind of what came before. And so that's a kind of lesson that we're all kind of living the consequences of that still to this day, in the way that our kind of settlement patterns. So what was there before was this amazing landscape of prairie and oak woodland, this savanna, that had been maintained for hundreds or thousands of years by the Kalapuya Native people that lived in the Willamette Valley. And so the pioneers, the settlers that settled there, there's these descriptions of the birds, rivers of birds flying through the sky so thick that it blacked out the sun. Wow. And the land was so rich, with grasses and forbs, and all of this was a managed landscape, kind of a product of people who were burning the landscape in order to increase productivity and for their lifeways. And so I want to like, so that kind of in my, kind of that part of my education, I just wanted to highlight that, and it made a big impact on me.
Definitely.
In particular, just this lack of understanding of like what these resources meant, you know, by these early settlers. So here's the camas bulb, which is a staple food crop, and in the map you can see the range of the Kalapuya tribal groups in the Willamette Valley. So I had, well, let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. So, so through the landscape architecture education, I was studying botany, environmental design, planning, things like stormwater management. And I had a lot of other influences. Like, I think like this is the part that I was excited about to talk with today, because hopefully there's some students listening. And I kind of think back to when I was in school and like how inspired I got by a lot of the things I learned in school and how it really changed the way I thought. And so I was really into volunteering at community gardens and learning about these different ways that like in Oregon and Washington, like things grow, like it's a really great place to grow food, as in California. But there was a big movement towards to create these edible autonomous regions where basically we're just like growing all the food you could on a block or like in a valley, and how to kind of think differently about our settlement patterns, even kind of in an urban environment. And another influence was a person named Masanobu Fukuoka, who wrote the One Straw Revolution. And he was this like farmer in Japan who had all these techniques for like no-till farming and doing things in a way that was kind of consistent with the cycles of nature and you know, kind of could increase productivity through kind of you know, other than mechanized kind of agricultural techniques. So those were the ideas that were kind of swirling around in my head. And at the time, I was volunteering on gardens, as I mentioned, there was an incident that occurred in this particular park. Oh, what's the name of the park? Skinner Butte Park. Okay, so of course. So he, yeah, he had his cabin kind of on the butte there. So there's in the top left corner there, where the little red area is, the city of the Eugene, they dumped some soil, like some hazardous soils that came from urban fill onto that part of the, it was a formerly like a city block, but it had been incorporated into Skinner Butte Park. So they dumped all these like bad stuff on the land. That activated the community, and they were like, what are you doing? You know, you guys, you know, get rid of that soil. And not only that, we want a garden. Not only that, we want a farm. Not only that, like we want, you know, to take back this whole park. And that was just kind of the vibe at the time. There was like this, there were, you know, Eugene is a place where it's like pretty intense activism, and that was, so it made an impression on me, but also I recognized an opportunity and a need that these community groups had. I was studying landscape architecture. I did drawings. I was learning about how to do all this site analysis. And I just inserted myself and said, hey, I want to make this my project. And so that's what I did. It's not long after the city, this kind of community group was formed, and they formed a nonprofit. And I used the project idea as my senior like thesis project, kind of like the capstone that you guys do here. So at the same time, the city was planning a public a master plan update for Skinner Butte Park. And so they had a number of workshops, including these design charrettes, where they invited the community and people kind of drew their ideas, and they got public feedback, all the stuff that you're supposed to do as a city to try and get good ideas. So I attended those meetings, and then I did some designs, and lo and behold, it worked. Like the city, adopted a lot of the design ideas, not all of them, but like in the image you can see Skinner City Farm, which was the nonprofit group that was formed, and they had these ideas about doing education for urban youth, kind of growing food, and also community resource. There was an element of historical interpretation about or the agriculture and the lifeways of Oregon in the historical era. And then my ideas were really that I was thinking a lot more about is those ideas about the camas bulb and like wetland restoration, and how we can kind of think differently about our settlement patterns. And these were, you know, not even things I had words for, but I was thinking about decolonization and you know, really how to kind of use the landscape as a way to kind of help kind of think differently, I guess. I kind of wanted to solve the world on this, like solve all the problems of the world on these 2 acres, which, you know, that kind of gained some perspective, but it actually turned into a farm. So awesome. That was really cool. And so that was like my moment of like civic engagement that gave me a lot of faith in how both government can work and kind of how, you know, what civics means essentially. Okay, so after that, I was kind of spinning my wheels in Oregon. Like I was, you know, not getting paid to do any of that stuff to help with that project. And so I had some jobs, and then I realized that I needed a real job. And I actually, at the time, my grandfather was diagnosed, I guess, terminally ill. And so I really wanted to go be with him. And I didn't know if I really wanted to work on the family farm, but I did, and I gained some good experience. So this is the part of the talk where I talk about my jobs. I was out in Michigan for 5 years, and it was good experience, but I wasn't really where I wanted to be necessarily. But I did get to drive equipment and build gardens, and I really liked working with plants. I got to introduce native plants into my grandfather's exotic plant nursery, and also my aunt was part of the family business. I have few people that run nurseries in my family, so that was something that I learned from. Okay, so then I really wanted to go back to, actually, at that time I was working in people's gardens. I was dealing with the foibles of, you know, clients. And I was just kind of like, I want to work in like natural spaces. Like, this is what matters to me. And I really had for a long time imagined the Channel Islands, and I knew I wanted to get there somehow. And so eventually I did find an opportunity to work with the Catalina Conservancy. I started as a technician. And
sorry, the screen for some reason didn't change on Zoom. So sometimes this happens with PowerPoint. So lags a little bit. You're right. Let me I might stop the share and then come back onto Zoom here. What's happening here? Zoom is being a little bit, maybe the Wi-Fi. Are you just seeing a white screen?
Yeah, Mara, we have good connection, good
okay.
sound, and we can see the image of Catalina on the projection, but we did not see it on the share before. So I'll go ahead and try to share again. We don't have a shared screen up.
I am on the shared screen now?
No.
No, we're not on the shared screen.
Yeah, just camera.
Okay, let me, because Zoom is what is tripping out on my computer for some reason. And that is what I need to not. Since I'm on Zoom on my phone, if I exit this meeting and come back in, I should be fine, right? Because there's a co-host happening.
Yeah.
Oh, but you know what? It's recording from my computer. Russ, can you do me a favor and try to record from your computer and see how that works?
record on this computer. Yeah, I'm up.
You are up and recording?
Yes,
Okay.
correct. At least from this point. Yep.
All right. So sorry, folks. Let's just, I'm going to,
Reload it.
yeah, reload Zoom here in just a sec. I hope it doesn't. Is this, it shouldn't end the meeting, but it's just my computer. Close the window. No, it's just my computer. Well, that's annoying. Okay, give me 1 second to. Yeah, it's just the Zoom program. Let me. Oh. That fix.
Maybe end it there and then reload. Oh,
Where's my task manager?
it's coming up on the.
Oh,
Projection.
because it's, I see.
I didn't realize
It's
you didn't see
it's
that
an
either.
extended.
Yeah.
Got it. Let me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wait, let's see. The account owner. Okay.
Yeah,
Got
you
it.
are the host now. It's a message I just got here.
Okay.
So you should
And
be
then-
able to share.
But it's still recording. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back on Zoom. So I'm just gonna, oh, no, do not start a poll. I'm going to start sharing the screen again.
Yeah, you're scared sharing still.
Yeah.
It's loading.
Yeah. It's loading.
There we go.
go. Yeah, you're
You're on the right screen.
Open it and go to the right page.
Okay, is this not the page we were on?
yeah, no,
No,
this is
you're
the
still on.
beginning of the presentation. Yeah.
Do you have 2 PowerPoints open?
Hmm.
This is a different PowerPoint that is not in
Yeah.
presentation.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay, got it.
So you could actually just do share screen.
Yeah. So we're all
Yeah.
good. You just need to jump to the correct
To the
slide.
right screen.
Yeah.
Joys of
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah, just keep sharing and just change slides. There we are. We're perfect.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much for your patience, everybody. There you go.
Good job, Myra. And Gloria for the catch.
Yes.
Is everybody there?
All good.
Yeah, okay. Oh,
Sorry,
that was
Peter.
the intermission.
Sorry, Peter. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I started with the Catalina Conservancy as a technician, and my hire there was in response to the island fire, which burned about 5,000 acres or 10% of the island. And so I initially the role was in large part to do seed conservation following the island fire, and as well as restoration projects, and then also work at the nursery, the native plant nursery, which the Catalina Conservancy manages. So quickly I kind of went through the ranks and ended up managing the nursery, and then focusing on plant conservation programs. So, no.
Just gotta click the poll. No? Oh, I see. There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Yep.
Okay, great. So John Knapp spoke to this last week, that the islands, and those of you who have visited Santa Rosa Island know that they all have history of degradation due to introduced feral animals. So these images are from Catalina, and the photo on the left is the a goat exclosure, goat fencing that was from the 1970s. And then following the island fire, the ecologists at the time, Denise Knapp and others, planned for the exposures to be in place following the island fire to protect habitat and recovery, especially of rare species on the island. So that's kind of the condition of the island at the time. And so yeah, as I mentioned, one of the primary roles was habitat restoration, but because of the feral animals, habitat restoration is difficult, and the management at the time was not able, or there were some significant obstacles to getting rid of deer in particular, as well as bison, which are managed on the island. So during this time, there was some drought as well, and so we saw a lot of conifer mortality. And these are all planted woodlands, conifer woodlands on the island. A lot of the trees were planted in the 40s and some even earlier in response to the erosion that was caused by feral ungulates on the island. So in most of the state, like this loss of forests, in particular coniferous forest, was problematic. On Catalina, it actually created an opportunity because, for a few reasons. One, that the conifer forests or woodlands are not native to Catalina, and they created an opportunity to do restoration that facilitated the recovery of chaparral somewhat. Still, of course, there's only so much you can do in the face of some of the browsers out there. But we felled the trees, and then we observed that the oak, and this is the island scrub oak, toyon, redberry, all kind of came up in the structure that you can see in the middle slide there, kind of, and it would keep the deer away somewhat, the kind of downed trees. As well, we would plant into the downed wood, as well as planting with cages to protect the species, chaparral in particular, that we were trying to do restoration with. So I had a great opportunity to work with the researcher Travis Longcore, who is a conservation hero, and his effort was focused on a modeling project that looked at past data, in particular taking the data from Denise Knapp and others who developed one of the early vegetation maps of the island, and using a modeling approach to model the potential natural vegetation of the island. So this is using data sets that are basically things you can get from LiDAR data. So it's the topography, like topographic wetness index, and kind of northeastness, slope and aspect. And from that, we were able to kind of create this finer resolution map of what could occur on the island. It's not predictive, and it's not like a historically accurate map, but it is a great tool for guiding restoration. And these technologies are becoming much more accessible today, and excellent tools for restoration and land managers. So also important are those rare species, and some of those rare species are entirely indicative of particular habitat types. So like the Catalina ironwood, as well as island oak, they form the island woodland community, these kind of few larger trees that occur on the island. So obviously the Catalina ironwood is a very rare plant. It's a relictual endemic to the islands, and then Catalina has its own subspecies. So planting that particular species was a goal of the project, and we employed like groups like the Long Beach Conservation Corps to do that work with us. And the other opportunity that I got working on Catalina was the chance to contribute in a small way to the flora. So this kind of in my beginning slide, I wanted to communicate like how some of these projects take a long time. And that's kind of like, I'm an old fashioned kind of person. I'm kind of slow to the, slow to the draw. Like I've spent 10 years out on Catalina, and maybe I overstayed my welcome a little bit, but I did get this chance just by attrition to get to work on the flora of the island. So this little news piece from the Conservancy's newsletter from 1999 shows the kind of depth of time that this particular project has been going on and still is going on today. And someday, hopefully there'll be a book published. So my role was helping with co-authors and my colleagues there, describing the plant distributions on the island and the ecology description. And that's all from data that I didn't collect. This is all data for the most part that had been collected by others in the past. It was just reviewing and affirming all of that information. So, so from there, so now I'm with the Nature Conservancy. What initiated the move was actually my wife, who took a job here at CSU Channel Islands, who's a associate professor, and I was fortunate to find a good fit with the Nature Conservancy doing restoration project management here in Ventura County. So let's see. So I wanted to kind of circle back. I started with the Santa Clara River, and the other project that we manage in this geography is the Ormond Beach Restoration and Public Access Project. And it's very likely that many of you on the call are aware of this project and aware of the project area. And so I don't intend to go into too much detail about the plan itself, but I will in a couple moments kind of highlight how we can get more info. Oh,
there we go.
That's interesting. Thanks. Yeah. So, but just to really, really briefly touch on the significance of this project. This project area is recognized by experts as the most significant wetland restoration opportunity in Southern California. And part of the reason is the proximity of this small project area to the Mugu wetland complex, and its potential, because it's not constrained by urban development, to create habitat that allows for inland and upland migration of these coastal wetland habitats, in particular salt marsh. And so the other important aspect is public access. So this project in South Oxnard is situated within a disadvantaged community, or in some parts severely disadvantaged. And that this part of Oxnard has very little access to the coast, as well as a legacy of industrial development that's occurred there, where essentially, well, that's good timing. So in this map, you can see there's a generating station, power generating station that's a once through cooling technology, as well as a EPA Superfund site, the Halico properties that are all kind of bordered on this project area. So it's extremely complex for these very competing land uses, as well as the social dimensions of the project that make it an increasingly complex project. So the project partners, the State Coastal Conservancy, the Nature Conservancy, and the City of Oxnard will be presenting the plan actually this month, the preliminary design plan. So this is my kind of call to action. So Ormond Beach is so significant, but its conservation cannot occur without this really huge and diverse community that are all kind of pulling for this project to be implemented. So I'm going to flip through like all these partners that we work most closely with: Surfrider Foundation, the Coastal Keepers, which is a newer group that are focusing on coastal cleanups, and just their enthusiasm and energy is inspiring. Friends of Ormond Beach, the Ventura Sierra Club, Ventura Audubon Society, which also has an affiliation with the CSU Channel Islands and does all the monitoring of the least Bellsbury, or sorry, the Western Snowy Plover and the California least tern out there. Friends of the Santa Clara River, Santa Clara River Confluence that runs education programs. And then of course the Ormond Beach Restoration and Public Access Project partners. And so we now have a Facebook page and we're promoting our design plan where we'll be presenting that in a public forum on November 17th at 5 p.m. And the link is there. You can also find the info on our Facebook page, as well as through the City of Oxnard's website. You can access the plan, download as well the public comments, and see the project progress as it stands today. So I'll stop there. Hopefully I didn't go too much over time.
No, and
yeah, I'll have any, if there's questions, I'd love to answer them.
Yeah, are there any questions in the, yeah, first of all, thank you. Round of applause there. Are there any questions in the chat? Let's see.
No questions at this point. Robin wanted to get across her love for the photo on Santa Catalina Islands with you with the vehicle with all the plants in the back there. When you were looking at the tree, but
In that case, I'll open it up to our audience here. We do have somebody who has a question. Please,
I can go
yeah,
here and ask.
sure,
Yeah.
absolutely. Please come on up.
So I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about the acquisition of property by the Santa Clara River. I thought it was really interesting that like the river was parceled out into properties that were owned. And so kind of what goes into, I guess, purchasing them, and yeah, what do you do with them once you have them? Like, yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
sure. So yeah, the Nature Conservancy is a, which I probably should have said this earlier, is a large NGO and has a lot of capacity for doing things like acquisitions, and has a history of land conservation through acquisition. And so as I mentioned, that initially the studies were done to identify those high priority parcels, and then a large prospectus was compiled, and then it was largely grant funding that supported that from the state, as well as other groups like the Santa Clara River Trustees Council, which manages mitigation funds. So once the properties were acquired, there's a lot of just site management that occurs, kind of, dealing with bad things on the land that we don't want there, and then trying to restore the ones what we do want. So the general program is monitoring to make sure that we're conserving the resources that we want, trying to plan around some of the resources that we want to improve, like groundwater, and making sure that there's water in the river, and then finally restoration, taking the condition that it's in and improving it. And some of the sites, which I didn't get into in detail, one, our Hanson property, which is in Santa Paula, was a former gravel quarry. And
wow.
So once operations ceased, and then eventually the Nature Conservancy acquired it, designs were developed to restore those former gravel pits into wetland areas, and then also improve the riparian habitat through removal of weeds and stuff like that.
I have a kind of a follow-up question to that is, so in Santa Paula, I know just because I live there, but I know that there is a lot of development happening down the Santa Clara River, like close to, if you go, basically going up Ojai Road over on the left side there. Was there any hesitancy from the Nature Conservancy about the development that was happening out there? I know a lot of the local residents were kind of disappointed that was happening, but you know, of course, there's just a lot of bureaucracy there, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, that's partly why ordinances like SOAR are really important, as well as the floodplain easement program, which the floodplain easement program can protect the parcel like that's in the floodplain in perpetuity once it's encumbered, so that you can't develop it in the future.
Got it.
So, but not everything falls under one of those two categories. So that's where kind of civic engagement is important, because all of these things have to go through a public review process, an environmental review process through CEQA. And so developments like that, generally disturb the landscape, and they there's usually mitigation that's associated with that. So like in Fillmore, the Bridges project, which is where just on the kind of east side of Fillmore, you see a new development called the Bridges, and there's some bridges, and that project has to pay mitigation to do restoration on the floodplain on TNC lands and elsewhere. And so that's part of how it works.
So they sort of like where they develop, they also dedicate time to try to restore other areas.
Yeah, in part. That's how our
Okay.
the mitigation works.
So we have a question in the chat from Professor Jaime Matera about are there opportunities, internships or similar opportunities that our students can get involved and get experience in at organizations such as TNC and the others that you mentioned in your talk?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first I want to just stress like how much we rely on our partners. So one of our goals is supporting our partners to help do some of that work and provide those opportunities. But as well, there's a lot of activity in particular, well, along the river and at Ormond Beach, we do have a volunteer program. We're a pretty small team here in the county as far as supporting volunteers, but there's such a need. And one of the best ways, just familiarizing yourself with the site, participating in some of the cleanups that are hosted by TNC and others, and then building from there. But yeah, I'd love to talk more, and I may have forgotten to include my my contact info, but maybe I can do that.
Hey, Peter, I have a quick question. Thank you so much for your presentation and the throwback photos. They were all awesome. I'm curious if you had any surprises moving from working in a primarily closed ecosystem out on Catalina to now working on the two large projects that you do. If you had any surprises or things that you didn't expect you would be challenged with, or could be a positive, like a lot of public support for the work you're doing, or just that transition can be so challenging. And I'm just curious if there was anything that kind of came out of left field for you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I think a lot of people who are familiar with Santa Rosa Island can kind of picture, understand the situation working and living in remote field stations, which comes with its own level of, just like a deterioration of social skills. And so that, that was true. I had a real culture shock kind of moving from Catalina. We were in Middle Ranch, which is in the middle of the island, population 24 for 4 or 5 years before we moved to Ventura County. And so, yeah, I think that was an adjustment. I think I'm still adjusting, but but otherwise, though, that more constructive, like, I think you have to want a little bit more every time you move, and I think that it's good. Like, you want to stay challenged in your role and continue to challenge yourself. And this particular role has really pushed me outside of my comfort zone with a lot of the complexity as well as the demand for a lot of the public engagement, and those aspects are things that I'm still learning and getting comfortable with.
Mm-hmm. I have a quick question. In the transition between your academic projects that you were doing, you said the project up in Oregon was sort of like your senior capstone, right? So what was probably some of the biggest takeaways from your academic career and then transitioning that into your professional into a professional setting? Like, what would you say are your biggest takeaways between the two settings? Yeah, I guess just
enjoy being a student as much as you can, because it's like a pretty like you all of a sudden it's like the real world, and like you don't get to like be quite so idealistic, and and so, but that's not to say that there's not idealism. It's just that you have to start to just kind of
work resources.
be a little more diplomatic and just kind of, it can't be only, only the vision. You have to like kind of start to like see the kind of complexity of situations. Yeah.
Got it.
Cool. I have a question. So you said you did landscape architecture.
Yeah.
And then you kind of went into more restoration type work.
Yeah.
And I know, that kind of stuff happens a lot. We do one thing, we major in something and then we end up somewhere else. So what's your advice for like, how do you get jobs in a field that maybe isn't completely set in your your field?
Yeah, just job experience. Like you learn so much more doing applied work than you do in school. And especially I found in small nonprofits, because you have to do it all. Like you just have to like wear so many hats. And so that's like, I think a really good working experience, like is working for local land trusts. If that's kind of, if you're in environmental science, is really good applied experience, like understand these problems, like that all land trusts face really similar problems. And so understanding those and then kind of working through like how to manage them is really important experience, like to have like firsthand. You really can't do enter without kind of going through that.
And I saw on one of your slides grant writing, I'm sure it's a big part of something you do.
Yeah,
that process is really important for a lot of jobs nowadays.
Yeah, and I think school actually is probably pretty good at helping with grant writing, just all the writing you do and the kind of research and stuff.
Just a couple comments in the chat saying, don't turn down any opportunity ever, is what they're saying. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is just building those relationships, even starting from your school days and kind of, working that through. Keeping those and maintaining those relationships have been very important. And some of the other takeaways that I've gotten from the other presentations as well. But it was more of a comment that thank you. I really appreciate all of that really unique and important information for students, especially. I think there's quite a few in the Zoom room. So I'm glad that we're getting all of this information in.
Yeah. Can I ask just a quick question here about your undergraduate project, the Skinner Park thing in Eugene seemed very interesting. And I'm curious about whether, you wound up becoming very involved in this whole city planning aspect and like community, community development or community management. And I'm curious, did you ever think that project would go that way and that you would be that involved in those sorts of decisions and just kind of, your lessons learned from that experience in that time?
Yeah, I was pretty surprised, to be honest, that that I was accepted as a student. A lot of times there's reluctance in the community to like bring on students, or at least that was, 1999 or whatever. So, but that's one thing that really inspires me about CSU Channel Islands is their focus on service learning and community-based research. And, I think every college should aspire to that. Like it's all these students are such a resource for a city, and there's so many opportunities for them to like get involved in projects like that. And maybe it's not as directly, I probably got pretty lucky, like being in the right place at the right time. But if you have like a passion, just engage. And I think that opportunities will come. And I think a lot about the planning that's going on in Ventura County right now. There's a transportation plan that's occurring. Of course, I mentioned Ormond Beach and many other initiatives like related to bikeways on the Santa Clara River. All of that needs public input, and there's a need for students to get involved. So I think I think it's the way it should work.
Are there any other questions at all? All good. Great point from Ken Neeson. Okay, and it's just about 6 o'clock right now, so we can go ahead and I'll just close out the meeting. I'm back. Thank you everybody for coming and watching Peter's presentation. This has been a really really great presentation that had a lot of really useful information, especially for the students. I think we keep coming back to this all-encompassing life is not linear message that has been going from day one of the speaker series, right? So definitely, what I really appreciated about this presentation too is just more of a comment is when Peter started talking about the ancestral knowledge of the Native communities and bringing those in when he was working on the project in Oregon. And that was really a cool, just keeping those perspectives is really important, I think. And yeah, just using resources that have been around forever, into new information that keeps coming in because of the studies that are being done. And so students can use those resources now, if you have a project coming up, like look into those. So that's really cool. But yeah, otherwise, this has been a great presentation. Thank you everybody for coming in person and on Zoom. And let's just give Peter one last round of applause. Thank you so much, Peter. And then we'll see you guys next time again, November 16th, I believe Noah Williams will be. And this is going to be, it is going to be a Zoom. He will join us on Zoom. He's up in the Owens Valley, but we will have the projector going on so that anybody that wanted to come in person is welcome to as well. We will try to have just the speaker thing, the speaker's sound happening and everything like that. So again, we'll go ahead and close out this meeting. Thank you, everybody. And I'll go ahead and end the meeting now. Bye. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Adios.
Adios. Buenas noches.